What's up, Calgary? Great Northern Discussions podcast here. I'm your host, Kevin Tucker, with a quick message before we dive into our next episode with longtime Calgary physician, Dr. Robert Dickson. Now, I know there's a lot going on out there right now, considering there's a tariff war between Canada and the United States, but there's also something big happening right here at home. They're going to be adding fluoride back into Calgary's water in the next couple of months. And if you're anything like me, maybe you sit on the fence on this. Doesn't seem like a big deal, right? Well, in September of 24, there was a huge case in the United States in the state of California that ruled in favor of removing fluoride from the water system down there. I'm going to read to you the judge's ruling right now. In all, there is substantial and scientifically credible evidence establishing that fluoride poses a risk to human health. It is associated with a reduction in the IQ of children and is hazardous at dosages that are too close to fluoride levels in the drinking water of the United States. So that's pretty big news. So you've got to expect that these are going to start to fall like dominoes around the world. Well, we can do something right here at home too to stop it. Dr. Bob is a health advocate, but he's also the founder of Safe Water Calgary. So you can head over to safewatercalgary.com and have your say and sign the petition there, and that will put a moratorium on the addition of fluoride back into Calgary's water. Pretty big deal, right? In addition, you can also check all my socials out and watch the episode on YouTube, and you can find out some more information on the potential harms that it can cause to us. And as always, many thanks to our sponsor, Lone Star Directional Drilling, right here in Calgary, delivering on all drilling needs for energy producers from corner to corner in Canada and the United States. Dr. Bob Dickson with us, a retired physician and founder of Safe Water Calgary. Welcome.
Thanks, Kevin. Nice to be on your show. Yeah, we got lots to talk about. Hopefully, we got lots of time.
We get all, as long as you got the time down there. Hey,
I do.
You do. Okay, so when did you first decide? First of all, I have no skin in the game personally myself in terms of the water. We haven't done a ton of research. I know for Calgarians, it went to a plebiscite here on whether we should have, water ingested, I guess, fluoride put into our water. And we had to vote on it again in 2021. And I, for myself and my wife and with a young family, we just saw, what little reading we had done, obviously doesn't seem very good to be putting into our bodies. But what first got you started into heading down this path of advocacy for safe water?
Well, Kevin, I'm a family physician trained in Calgary, a degree in kinesiology before, and then I was paramedic as well before I went into medicine at a later age. So going into medicine at 33, they have less capability of indoctrinating me, so to speak. The young kids that come out 19, 20, 21, 22, start medical school, they're just primed for indoctrination, and they just, follow the rules, follow the regulations, follow the protocols and policies. They're just good little doctors. Repeat after me kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So I've always had a healthy distrust of the system, and that certainly multiplied many times over in the last 5 years. And we won't mention what that's about because we're talking about fluoride and fluoridation today. Fluoridation, I'll just give you a brief history for Calgary for fluoridation. Calgary has been one of the outliers. It was for many decades, rejected fluoridation with 4 petitions or plebiscites, 4 public plebiscites during the 1960s and 70s. And there's just a lot of activists and physicians working against fluoridation at that time. So they won those plebiscites against fluoridation narrowly. And then in 1989, Dr. David Swan, who was the medical officer of health at that time, he kind of orchestrated a really good campaign along with Alberta Health Services, the College of Physicians and Surgeons, the Alberta Medical Association, Health Canada, Alberta Dental Association, etc. Got all of them on side and advocating for water fluoridation. So in 1989, the plebiscite first passed in Calgary. Now, by that time, like Edmonton had been fluoridated since the 1960s, as had Lethbridge. Red Deer was the first city in Alberta to fluoridate in 1959. So it had been around a while, but Calgary had resisted. But in 1989, they passed this plebiscite and council voted to put fluoride in. Now, we don't use pharmaceutical grade fluoride like you get in your toothpaste. What we put in 95% of the time in North America is hydrofluorosilicic acid. That's quite a mouthful. HFSA for short, hydrofluorosilicic acid. And that's a toxic waste that's scrubbed out of the fertilizer industry stacks mostly in Florida, Mexico, China, uncleaned, completely adulterated with other traces of other things like cadmium, lead, arsenic, mercury, small amounts of those things, but it's not cleaned. It's not cleaned at all. It's not done in a pharmacy lab or anything like that. So, yeah, so that's what they started. That's what they put in, but it took them 2 years to build that infrastructure because that stuff is so toxic. It's so corrosive to pipes, to lead solders, that sort of thing, to old lead pipes, that it just eats through everything. Like if you were to spill some on your desk right now, they'd have to call in the hazmat team to clean it up. It'd eat through your desk, it'd eat through the floor below you, eat through everything.
Yeah.
Highly toxic. Yeah. But industry has found a way to convince doctors and dentists that it's good for kids. So instead of them having to take it to Swan Hills, for instance, and dispose of it at thousands of dollars a ton as a toxic waste, they can put it in our city water and tell us it's good for us and it's good for our kids and it's good for our seniors. And we can dispose of it in our bodies. That's quite an end around by industry, isn't it?
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, and I was just thinking of, from the other side, and I know you're coming at it from an ingestion point of view, putting it into our bodies, and we'll get into some of the studies that also I found. I'm sure you have way more in your back pocket, but I'm just thinking from the other side, like we have a young daughter, dentist. She goes to see her family dentist, who is a good friend of ours, and our daughter is 7 years old. She brushes every day. She actually flosses. Were we checking on her, brushing her level? No, that's our fault. We weren't watching if she was doing it fully, but does brush every day, more than most kids, I feel, at that age. And then we take her for her first checkup, or second, whatever that was, and of course she's littered with cavities, and she's got four on the top. And anyway, our family friend dentist said, we're seeing a spike in cavities in children. Most of them have 4 on top, 4 on the bottom. She had 4, and then turns out now she's got 4 on the bottom. I know I'm not asking you to answer from a dentist's point of view, but like, if we have fluoride in our water, are they telling us that that's what's saving the teeth? Like, what's the adverse effects of putting all that drinking every single day in our cooking every day? What can happen to us ingesting that much fluoride?
There's a lot of points to hit on there, Kevin.
Yeah.
The one thing, fluoride is not necessary for one single body function. Don't let any dentist or any pro-fluoridation tell you otherwise. It's not a supplement. It's not a vitamin. It's a medicine. It's a medicine used to treat caries. Now, is it successful at doing that? Well, maybe it was 40, 50 years ago before we had fluoridated toothpaste, but it's not anymore. And I could send you to a dozen dentists in Calgary that will tell you they haven't seen a blip in cavities in the last 14 years that we've not had fluoridation.
Yeah.
Not a blip. So that's just part of the pro-fluoridation fear-mongering for the most part. Are we getting more cavities worldwide? Yes, actually, that sadly is true. And a lot of it's because of diet, sugary drinks, lack of vitamin D3, lack of vitamin K2, lack of magnesium, lack of zinc and copper. I mean, there's all sorts of things that we're missing out there. So if you look at the World Health Organization data, the World Health Organization, it's a huge entity. It's a monstrous entity. And some factions within the World Health Organization support fluoridation and some don't. The World Health Organization's own data, their graphs show from the 1960s on until about 2010, all the fluoridated countries And we got to touch on that one too, because only 5% of the world is fluoridated, by the way. It's not a global or universal thing. 5% of the world is fluoridated. But out of those countries, those 5% that are fluoridated, then they graphed them against several countries that weren't fluoridated. And the cavities came down from 1960s to the 2010s, all in unison. All in unison. So you can't even tease out the fluoridated versus the non-fluoridated countries in those World Health Organization graphs. So right there, it says that water fluoridation is not doing it. What was doing it? Well, in the 1960s, 70s, 80s, fluoridated toothpaste, better diet, more vitamins, more supplements, healthier lifestyle. And they all came down at the same time. Unfortunately, now they're kind of starting to ramp back up, fluoridated or not. So fluoride has nothing to do with it. It's diet, lifestyle. I mean, there's other things, there's genetics and whatever in there too. But
Yeah.
fluoride and water fluoridation is not doing it. And even topically, we used to give a pass to the pro-fluoridationists on topical fluoridation, because even the CDC, the Center for Disease Control in the States, you probably heard the saying that came out from them in 1999, saying that water fluoridation is one of the top 10 public health achievements in the entire, North America. Well, what we say now is ending water fluoridation will be one of the top health achievements of the 21st century. So a couple of years after the CDC came out with that infamous statement, they quietly admitted, and they didn't publicize it, but they did admit, and they had it on their website, that, folks, fluoridation's effect is only topical. It's not systemic. It's not swallowed. It's only topical on the teeth. And so we've given them that pass for many years. But now there's so much good information out that you shouldn't even be using fluoridated toothpaste. For another thing, important question to ask your daughter. Does she swallow any toothpaste?
Great question. Wouldn't know, right?
Usually
she knows not to swallow, but however.
Yeah, but usually it's bubblegum flavored or some nice little fruity flavor that the kids go, oh, yum, yum, we'll just brush, then we'll swallow a big bunch of that. And it's pretty highly concentrated. It says in the back of the toothpaste labels, at least in the United States still, that if you swallow a pea-sized amount of fluoride, you got to call Poison Control Center.
Yeah.
So you don't want kids swallowing fluoride toothpaste at all.
No.
And the amount of that pea-sized amount of toothpaste is the equivalent of about 1.5 glasses of fluoridated water in a normally fluoridated Canadian or U.S. city.
Mm-hmm.
Who's controlling that dose? Nobody.
Nobody is. No.
And we get fluoride from. We get fluoride from a bunch of different things. We get fluoride from some of our liquids, our drinks, our beers if they don't reverse osmosis the water, from packaged and processed foods, from deboned foods. Fluoride's in a lot of different things, but the main amount of fluoride that we get in our human bodies is from water fluoridation. Probably about 2/3 to 3/4 is from water fluoridation.
And it's interesting I guess in Calgary too, that we've gone back to vote on this so many times. And I think you said earlier, correct me if I'm wrong if you didn't say it, but the first time we got it in Calgary was 91? 91. Yeah. So I mean, even just going to the voting box in the last election and to have it on, I just didn't understand why we're going back to this. Like, who is pushing this? Is it just the dentist? This is lobbying? Like, who's got the sway here? Like, who's holding the big stick?
Good questions. Let me just fill in that time between 1991 and 2021, the plebiscite in 2023. So a lot of things happened in there. Okay. So in 1991, we started fluoridation in Calgary. They flipped the switch. They finally built that. It'd taken 2 years and many hundreds of thousands of dollars to build that ironclad system to infiltrate fluoride into our water system. So during the 1990s, some activist friends they'd read the science and they didn't agree with it. So they raised a lot of hell in Calgary and finally forced the city of Calgary to do another plebiscite. And that plebiscite was in 1998. And so in that one, I was a busy family doctor. I see hundreds of things come across my desk every day, every week. And the Alberta Health sent out some very glitzy pamphlets. They recommended, Calgary Health Region recommended, Public Health Canada Association recommended it. Health Canada recommended water fluoridation. So I just went, hey, this sounds pretty good, safe and effective. So I voted for water fluoridation. I voted for it in 1998. Excuse me.
Interesting. Okay.
Those same activist friends came to me after that plebiscite passed
Take a sip of your fluoride there.
Yeah, no fluoride. No,
Yeah.
there's only fluoride and salt in Mexico. Nobody eats the fluoridated salt. Um, so, so they challenged me. These activist friends challenged me to look at the actual science, and so I took that on. And a couple of weeks later, I said, "Oh my goodness, what have I done here?" And I said, "I made a grave mistake because there's a lot of science that we're doing harms," and that was in 1998. So I went, "Oh, what do I do about this?" So I enlisted my friend, Dr. James Beck, Dr. Jim Beck, who is a double MD, PhD. He was one of the founders of the UC Medical School. So he was one of my mentors when I went through medical school in the 1980s. So I went to Jim. He'd nearly retired. And I said, "Jim, what do you know about water fluoridation?" He says, "Well, I'm out of the States. I'm from the States. And both of my degrees, my MD and my PhD, were out of Texas and Berkeley. And I think water fluoridation is pretty good, isn't it?" And he didn't know because they fluoridate like about 3/4 of the people in the United States.
Right.
And so I said, "Jim, would you mind looking at this science?" And he said, "Sure. Well, if you, Bob, I'll do that." So a few weeks later, we met again, and he said the same thing as me. "Oh my gosh, what have we done here?" I said, and he said at that time, in 1999, it was by then, he said, "Bob, there's so much science on our side that we'll have this finished and ended within a few months." So I held him to that. We formed a team. We met with the deans of medical schools, with the medical officers of health, the dental officers of health, and we started slowly meeting with the city councilors. There's a couple that were open to it, Drew Farrell, Brian Pencott. And so over the years, we met with them. Dr. James Beck produced the book, wrote the book, the case against fluoride, which is the best book that's ever been written on fluoride ever. He co-authored that with Dr. Paul Connett, a PhD in chemistry from the United States, and Dr. Micklem, a PhD from England. And that was published in 2010. So we bought all those books, but we bought cases of those books to give away to all the aforementioned, plus the city councilors. And every time we went into City Hall, every few months, there'd be another counselor or two that would come to the meeting. And pretty soon there's a bunch of them on our side. We had more than a majority. So in 2010, Drew Farrell and Brian Pencott and Andre Chabot, who's still back on council, brought forward the motion. And it's a really good motion. There's only about 7 or 8 whereas and therefores in it, but it was really strong. And they passed it 10-3. We won that 10-3. So that was without a public vote. And another point is we should not be voting in a public plebiscite on whether I should be medicating you or you should be medicating me or you should be medicating your neighbor or anybody else. We shouldn't have the ability because plebiscites can be manipulated so easily by the people that have them agree.
Mm-hmm. I agree wholeheartedly with that one.
So Jim Beck, Dr. Beck says we can have this done in a few months. It took us 12 years, Kevin, 12 years to get fluoride turned off. The fluoride taps were turned off in 2011.
Crazy.
And they're still off in Calgary. Despite that plebiscite you mentioned earlier, the 2021 plebiscite, that we lost 62 to 38%. Again, all the bigs were called in. Alberta Medical Association, Alberta Dental Association and College, Health Canada, Public Health Association of Canada, CDC. They called in all those people and they told all their hundreds of thousands of employees, "Oh yeah, safe and effective. You got to vote for this." And so we lost resoundingly. But if you tear those numbers apart, this is a really important point. Devin, if you tear those numbers apart, did you vote against fluoridation in that 2021 plebiscite?
We did. Yeah, we both did. And just to make a note, coincidentally, how you and I got connected, which is excellent, and I appreciate you coming in here. We just switched our water like several weeks ago to a filtration system, knowing that it was coming. We're also getting older and we're more concerned with what's going into our bodies. So,
and for your kids too. For your kids, there's like hormones and antibiotics and pesticides and herbicides, and some of them get filtered out, but not all. And so if you add those on top of fluoride, you got a big whack. But even if fluoride doesn't go in, you should still have a good water system, is my opinion now. Yeah, I used to have, in the days when we were fluoridated, I had a company called Good For You, which was a really good Calgary company, and they would deliver in glass, those big glass jugs to my clinic, up to my home as well, and really good water, remineralized, reverse osmosis, but remineralized to get the good minerals back in, and there is no fluoride in it. And so now I'm going to have to do that because all I have is a fridge filter. Just one of those little ones that plugs into the fridge, and that doesn't take fluoride out. Most filters do not take fluoride out. So you got a reverse osmosis system?
Yeah, we got it through Culligan. Like we had it's got like a 4 or 5. There's like a manifold and there's a membrane and another system. So it's an intricate system. Was not cheap.
No, it's probably what, 5,000 give or take?
Not quite that high, but pretty high.
Yeah.
He did say the guy who installed it said, I said, well, business must be good for you right now. He said, actually, it is. They're and the
And
advertising.
there's a lot of companies doing it too. You can get anything from a $300 reverse osmosis system from Home Depot and hook it up yourself, or you can get a $10,000 or $12,000 system, or you can get a $6,000 Cadillac from, I don't recall the name of the company offhand, but they're just new, and they also hydrogenate the water, so it's really cleaned well, and then it's put extra hydrogen is put in to infuse your cells and to help your immune system build. So there's all kinds of Cadillac systems out there too. There's countertop ones like the Berkeys and Santivias that are decent if you buy the extra fluoride filter, and those would only be a few $100s for those systems, and then you change the filter out every 6 months or so because they clog up pretty quick. But the best place to go if you want to, if your listeners are wanting to know where to go to check out, sorry, but Culligan isn't my favorite. That system you well for many years, but I think there's better ones out there, and you can find those on Truth About Fluoride, all one word. Don't put it on there. It's just Truth About Fluoride altogether, truthaboutfluoride.com. And it's a young engineer from Ontario called Casey Kroll, Kroll, and he's done an incredible job. He saved me a ton of time and energy and money too, because he's tested dozens and dozens of pitcher filters for your fridge, plug-in filters for your fridge, countertop filters, reverse osmosis under the sink, reverse osmosis for the whole house. He's checked those all out. He's tested them all, and he's come out with his recommendations for the best. And he's also tested tea. Like he's tested probably 40 different teas, because teas hyper-concentrate fluoride. And so he's tested a whole range of teas and tells you the good, the bad.
Didn't even know that. No, geez.
He's
tested tea in our house. Really?
He's tested toothpaste. Look at his testing on toothpaste. So what you do now is just get any toothpaste that has hydroxyapatite instead of fluoride. Because all fluoride does is changes the hydroxyapatite that's already in the infrastructure of your teeth. It changes to fluoroapatite, which is a little bit stronger, harder. Yeah. But you get hydroxyapatite. It's quite a mouthful. Hydroxyapatite toothpaste, and it strengthens your teeth much more naturally, makes them much healthier than fluoride does. And if you think of making something harder and stronger, you don't always make a steel bar as strong and as rigid as you can, because it can snap and break if it's too strong or too rigid. So it has to have a bit of tensile strength in there, a bit of bend. And that's the same thing that happens with too much fluoride. You get fluorosis, the spotting of the teeth that can actually damage and destroy teeth. And if you look at, a good way to look at it is the edentulous states in the U.S. Edentulous means loss of teeth. So you look at seniors and you look at the states that have the highest loss of teeth, the highest edentulous rate, and you look at the two highest loss of teeth states, Kentucky and Louisiana, I believe, are the two.
Yeah, I was going to automatically pick somewhere down south just because.
Yeah, and they're 99% fluoridated, 99% fluoridated for years and years, and they had the highest loss of teeth. You look at the lowest fluoridated places in the United States, the lowest is Hawaii, and guess which state has the lowest loss of teeth? Hawaii. What a coincidence.
Crazy. Man, well, that is wild. So so you're also, obviously you're a huge advocate, but also at the same time, you're also a huge pain in the ass. To some people, right? And so you just tell us about what you just went through and are going through as recently as the last couple of months here.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. It's been quite a rough ride actually for 6 years, because Julia Gishon, the head ethicist at the University of Calgary Medical School, and Dr. Ian Mitchell, who is the former head of pediatrics in Calgary, them and a team put a major complaint against me to the College of Physicians and Surgeons, and then the College of Physicians and Surgeons should have just they did actually make that complaint go away in February of 2019. So my complaint was put in January of 2019. And it was dismissed by the college's chief complaints advisor in February of 2019. And then they appealed that. Juliette Guichon and her team appealed that. And then that's when it should have disappeared from the college because they just didn't have any grounds to stand on. So what they're trying to do is kind of like a slap suit. Have you heard of a slap suit, the strategic lawsuit against public participation?
Okay. Yeah, I have heard of that.
Slap suit. So big companies in the States, for instance, like the big chemical companies or big ag, someone says, well, we think that your herbicide is causing cancer. They'll go slap. They'll put them, it's a big lawsuit against them, costs a huge amount of money to defend against that. But the main thing is it's the time and the energy, and they tie you up. They try to prevent you from speaking. They prevent you from getting this to the public. And so that's what happened there. They tried to shut me down, and they actually said in their appeal that they're just really afraid that Dr. Dickson is going to talk to city council and convince them to not fluoridate and save these poor children from all these cavities.
Right. Well, I mean, the frustrating part as just a citizen is we're caught in the middle, right? You've got, like, isn't that what science is all about? Science is about differing studies that show actual clinical proof, such as lowered IQ in children ages 3 to 5 in pregnant women if they ingest it over a certain amount of time. I've read studies on that. And then there's studies, that try to debunk it. So you've got all these scientists fighting each other. What are we to do in the middle of all of this?
It's really hard for the public, Kevin, but it's even harder for the counselors that have to make that decision. And how we won, we won for a couple of reasons in 2010-11 when they finally turned off the fluoride taps then. Yeah. And we won without a public vote. They didn't take it to plebiscite because they knew that public plebiscites can be manipulated and rigged and are not a good way to practice medicine. Because another thing, there's no control of dose or dosage when you put things in the water. That's why we don't use Prozac or Lipitor or anything else in the water, or aspirin or Tylenol or whatever, because you can't control the dose. But we won in 2010 and 11 for two major reasons. One was the major cost that was going to be involved. At that time, it was about $6 or $7 million to rebuild the fluoridation infrastructure because it rots out so easily from this toxic chemical they put in, this toxic waste. And the other reason we won, I thought, was even more profound. And Brian Pencott and Drew Farrell led that. And I remember Brian saying, we're not scientists here. We're not trained as scientists. Most of us have very little science background on city council. So we get reams of information on both sides and discern that. But we on the anti-fluoride side, we have a lot more information and we have more current information. But still, for counselors to be scientists, that's not what they're trained at. But what he said, what we are trained at is the morals and ethics of making a decision that affects all our citizens in Calgary. And it's not moral and it's not ethical to mass medicate through the water where we have no control of dose or dosage.
That's a great point. Yeah, mass medicating with no control.
That's what it is, because before, it's not a supplement, it's not a vitamin, it's not, the only thing it can only be a toxic waste that's being disposed of in our city water or a medicine. So which one do you pick? Well, either one, Health Canada does not regulate either way. Environment Canada calls it a toxin, but Health Canada says, yeah, we don't regulate water fluoridation. But then on the next page, they go, well, yeah, it's probably safe and effective. And it's probably okay to do it at 0.7 parts per million. So we do freedom of information requests, and they have 0 studies. Alberta Health has 0 studies, but they recommend water fluoridation too. But they have 0 safety studies. None of them have any safety studies.
So so that's my question then would be, how much are they putting in then? This 0.7, is that what you're saying?
So it used to be about up to 1.2 parts per million in North America. And then, we started coming out with some toxicity studies and some damage to thyroid studies. So they lowered it to 1 part per million, then 0.8 parts per million. And now it's 0.7 parts per million all across North America and Australia and New Zealand. So we should talk a bit about Canada and how Canada is fluoridated or not.
Yes.
So if you look at BC, British Columbia, the province to the west of us in Calgary, 98.2% not fluoridated. Not fluoridated. Ontario is 71% fluoridated. Toronto has been fluoridated since the 1960s. You compare Vancouver's teeth to Toronto's kids' teeth, and guess whose are better? Vancouver's kids' teeth are better than Toronto's kids' teeth. Toronto's kids have more cavities than Vancouver. And Vancouver's never been fluoridated.
That's wild.
Right there should stop it. Right there. It should stop.
So
You go across the country. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say this goes back, not to open a can of worms. I'm not going to talk about COVID. It's just kind of reminding me of it. Like, why would they not just report this stuff? Like, why would they not say it? You know what I mean? Why don't they want to put it in public?
Gavin, because there's money and power and politics. Oh, that's the reason. You peel back all the layers. It's money, power, and politics. And it certainly is there. Because Alberta's about 42% fluoridated now. Saskatchewan's in the 60s. Manitoba's in the 60s. Ontario, as I mentioned, 71%. Guess what Quebec is? How much of Quebec is fluoridated?
Oh, yeah. I have no idea.
Would you hazard a guess?
Zero?
You win the prize, my friend. Hardly anybody would recognize that. They're actually 99.75% not fluoridated, and they're going to be at 100% not fluoridated, or zero, like you said, zero fluoridated by the end of this year.
Oh, you're kidding.
Quebec is going to be zero by the end of this year.
There you go, Quebec. Hey, doing their own thing like always.
Yeah.
In their own bubble over there. They figured something out.
Well, they did. And it was mainly led by my good friend, Dr. Gilles Perrant. He's a naturopath, an MD, and he's led the anti-fluoridation charge for 45 years. And he has a group behind him called Eau Secure. Eau Secure has about 300 different subgroups all around the province. And they tackle, it starts talking about water fluoridation down there. So they just whack them down with the science, and they say, well, Health Canada doesn't regulate it. It's not a vitamin. It's not a supplement. It's not needed for anything. And it's called a toxin by Environment Canada. So what are you guys going to do with that?
What
shows safety studies? Well, they can't show many safety studies. He does the FOIAs with all them, the Freedom of Information requests to all the levels of government. And they can't provide them with a single study. So he says, you're gonna put a poison in our water, and you don't have any studies to back it up. And they go, yeah, well, okay, maybe we won't then.
Yeah, you're right, I guess. Okay, you win this time.
Yeah. And the others. Your turn.
I was just gonna say, in following some of your work and some of your research and just some of your path and your story, I stumbled across, and it's still up there. You had a chat with the Maxwell Dental Center, and you're I don't know if you even recall, but anyway, they're still up there. The video is still there, and
Dr. Graff. That's Dr. Graff.
Okay, yeah, and they said, they leave it up because they want to show the people, they want to be open about it and then transparent about both sides. So, which I really admire.
Yeah, those clips are pretty good. And as you mentioned, they're still there. We did them probably half a dozen years ago. It was in my backyard, because my backyard has nice mountains and ponds, and it's right across the street from Dr. Graff's office in Markham Hall. So he just came over with his film crew and filmed me in my backyard. So, so there's lots of dentists in Calgary that don't allow fluoridation across their doorstep. I mean, fluoride, no, sorry. But most dentists are in favor of fluoride and fluoride treatments because they can make a 6-figure salary without seeing a patient by just doing fluoride topical applications in their office with their dental hygienist or their dental assistants.
Yeah.
So they don't even have to see a patient. Yeah, just go back and talk to Mabel, my assistant there, and she'll put fluoride on you, and we'll charge you $30 or $40 or whatever.
Crazy. Yeah, always got to follow the money every time. That's the
spit that stuff out because it's really strong. They tell you to rinse 3 or 4 times because it's so strong. You don't want any of that in your body. But you can take 10 glasses of water. So, for instance, Kevin, if you're working outside, say you're working out in your yard and you're drinking 10 glasses of water a day, and I'm sitting in my cozy little office drinking 1 glass a day, you're getting 10 times the dose that I am of fluoride. Who's controlling that?
Yeah.
Insane.
Nobody, of course. Yeah.
It's totally unethical and immoral to put something in the water to medicate. And they're medicating. They're trying to treat dental cavities and caries. And of course, they're being very unsuccessful at doing that. Maybe what we should do is just get into some of the things that have happened recently. Like we've had science, Dr. Walbot, Dr. Willenbouw from Netherlands. There's all kinds of docs like that for decades have had science out. Those guys are all past. But that science recently is really strong. Like the last 10 years, we've had lots of good science come out, published in peer-reviewed journals like the Journal of the American Medical Association, Pediatrics, double, triple vetted studies that were so good. The pro-fluoridationists are still trying to tear them down and say, yeah, well, they use urine fluoride as a measure. Well, urine fluoride, folks, is one of the best measures. It's the only measure we have out there. And it's very accurate, especially if you use it on a population level. And they've gone through 10 Canadian cities that have been followed by the MIREC cohort. MIREC stands for Maternal and Infant Research on Environmental Contaminants.
Yeah.
MIREC cohort started in 2006, and then these docs and researchers, PhDs out of York University and Simon Fraser said in 2015 they started noticing, well, there's a big fluoride signal here, and let's start looking at that. There's a signal on possible brain damage. So their first study was published in 2019. They got about a dozen studies published since, really good studies. But just in this last year, so, well, let's say a year and a month. January of 2024 was the Lotus study published out of England. And they followed 6.4 million people for 10 years. And guess how effective fluoride was over there? Between year 0 and 4%. Between 0 and 4% effective. And they said it's probably closer to 0, but we just can't take it down with a study of that size. We can't take it down to 0. But less than 4% effective. 4%, even if we give them that, they say 25% all the time, the pro-fluoridationists to this day. Dr. Johnny Johnson from the American Fluoridation Society said just last week, they caught him lying. He said, oh, yeah, it's 50% effective. 4% with a 10-year study of 6.4 million people. Yeah. And then the Cochrane collaboration came out with their study in October of last year, 2024, and they did a meta-analysis, or it's called a systematic review, actually. And the Cochrane collaboration is the worldwide esteemed body of medical people, scientists, researchers, doctors that tackle all things medicine that might be controversial. So they did a study, and they looked at all the studies out there on the effectiveness of water fluoridation. And in October, they published their meta-analysis, their report, and they said between 0 and 3% effective.
Wow. Yeah.
So there's 2 major studies just within the last year showing how totally ineffective that is. Between 0 and 4% is less than 1/4 of one cavity a lifetime. You're going to toxify everybody and drop IQ in kids' brains between 3 and 10, or even as high as 15%. If a pregnant woman drinks a lot of fluoridated water, pregnant women tend to drink water. If they drink fluoridated water and then they can't breastfeed for whatever reason, and they mix their baby formula with fluoridated water, that kid can have an IQ loss of between 9 and 15 points. That is huge.
That's massive. Yeah, that was some of the studies that I was reading. Just with the significant drop in IQ in young children through pregnant women ingesting it, and it's insane. And that the one study that I had read, they were all attacked as well after the fact. They were attacked for doing this study, and
they've tried to strip licenses away from these good researchers down in York and then Simon Fraser. They've tried so many tricks. The pro-fluoridationists just they know no bottom. They'll sink lower than you could ever imagine.
Well, maybe maybe you're in a good position because you're retired. So what are they going to do?
Yeah, well, I had to go through the College of Physicians and Surgeons tribunal, whether I was retired or not. So that was the last week of January of this year, so just a little over a month ago. And instead of fighting them tooth and nail and coming out with much, much higher fees and court costs and everything and not getting anything accomplished there, I decided to plead guilty to just one of the charges, and they dropped 3. So I won on 3. I won on 3 different things. I won on the right to speak out, freedom of speech. I won on the science of fluoridation. They weren't going to tackle me on that one because they really didn't have a chance. And also won on, they charged me with practicing outside my scope of training. So as a family doctor, I can't talk about good studies in Canadian cities.
Not an expert. Yeah.
Not an expert. Yeah, but Juliette Guichon, who's a history minor and law, she's a lawyer. history and law. She can
I
talk.
read on her too. Yeah.
She can talk out all the time. She's on TV, on radio, and the press all the time because the press aren't allowed to print or publish or talk about anything anti-fluoride. They're allowed to talk about pro-fluoride as much as they want because hedge fund owners in New York and on Wall Street, just that's the edict they put out. You shall not say anything negative about water fluoridation ever.
Yeah.
But
That's wild. I just, it's a different world. That this fluoride battle has been going on as long as it has. It's
really sad. But you're probably following some of what's happening in the States now, right?
Yeah.
With President Trump. And then President Trump, you can talk, different sides, things about him. I'm not a big fan of his originally, but this time around, I think he's learned some things. He's learned to hire good people, to surround himself with really good people. And that includes RFK Jr. And RFK is one of my modern day heroes for probably 2 decades. And he has, one of the first things he said when he was nominated for that position of head of HHS, he said, one of the first things I'm going to do is I'm going to send to all the states that that mandate fluoridation. There's 13 states that mandate fluoridation. And I'm going to send to all those states, but to all the waterworks organizations, all the water boards, all the counties, all the cities, all the towns in every state in America. I'm going to send them all the science against water fluoridation. And I'm going to recommend that they stop. He can't make them stop. He does not have that power.
Sure.
But a head of HHS, Health and Human Resources in the States, Health and Human Services, HHS, he has under him, so HHS is a multi-trillion-dollar entity in the States, multi-trillion dollars. And under him is CDC, NIH, FDA, EPA, all those are under him. So he can send to all those organizations too, that they should not be promoting water fluoridation. It should be stopped immediately because it's damaging our kids' brains. Wow. So that's big. So in the States, the States accomplishes that. Already there's been over 40 communities and counties and organizations that have stopped fluoridation in the last few months since all these major things have come out. And there's a couple of things we should talk about too as far as studies.
Yeah.
But over 40 places have dropped it, and there's another over 60 in the pipeline now that are looking at dropping it.
We're fans of RFK too. I love that guy. I just we were pretty excited, and we even had some friends that lived down in the States that they were down in California, and they gave the automatic, that guy's a quack. Well, they're just buying into the propaganda MSM machine. I mean, the guy's been litigating his entire life. This is what he's done. He just reads data, and he's passionate.
He knows the data inside and out. That guy's
I know.
And he's studied vaccines for it's going on 20 years now, but at least 15. Sure. And he wrote a book that you might know of called Vaxxed, Unvaxxed with Dr. Brian Hooker. That's an excellent book that anybody is thinking about vaccinating their kids should read. There's lots of stuff, but anyway, we're segueing away from what we should be.
What happens?
Okay, he's strongly anti-fluoride, as is, have you heard Dr. Joseph Ladapo speak, the Surgeon General of Florida?
No.
Oh, I got to send you something from him.
Yeah, fire it over.
Yeah, he's given, his press conference on November 22nd of 2024, so just a couple months ago, in front of a water treatment plant in Florida. And he gave about a 12-minute talk there that was so good, that was full of science, but full of common sense and rationale. He's a very reasoned and very nuanced guy. And in that press conference, he said, I'm sending this science out to every water board, every organization, every city and town in Florida. And anybody that continues to use the practice of water fluoridation is doing medical malpractice. Those were his exact words, medical malpractice. Those are the strongest words I've ever heard out of a politician ever about water fluoridation.
Well, that's good to hear then. Yeah. He's putting his neck out there, right? Because he believes in it.
And he did a really good, I can send you to the link for, it was a fairly small town, maybe 60 or 80,000 people or whatever in Florida, called Bartow. And they had a big major council meeting, and Dr. Ladapo presented there. And in there, he called the people that had presented before him, Dr. Johnny Johnson from the American Fluoridation Society and Dr. Stephen Slott, the press guy from the American Fluoridation Society, which is a tiny little organization of retired dentists that want to protect their golden calf, their precious little water fluoridation project. And he called those two. Those two presented first, and then Dr. Latipo came on, and he called them liars in public, in a public forum that was televised to as many in the country that wanted to watch him. He said it made me physically sick to listen to these guys promoting their agenda. It was so strong.
Awesome. Yeah, that's all stuff that gives you goosebumps, right? You're like, oh yeah.
Exactly. And then after me, he says, I'm not going to take up too much time. I'm not going to talk about the science because these two people beside me know the science. One of them is Dr. Ashley Malin, who was a protege of Dr. Christine Till out of York University in Toronto. And she was one of the mains in those MIRAC studies that I mentioned earlier. And she moved to Florida. She's now an assistant professor at the University of Florida. So she came on and talked for about 5 or 7 minutes on the science, gave a really nice, brief, brisk, powerful presentation. And then after her, they had an older dentist, a female dentist from Florida, who came on and just powerfully stated the science against water fluoridation too. So yeah, it is, you get those sorts of people standing up and talking the science. Oh, and the other guy that was at this Bartow city council meeting was Dr. Griffin Cole. He's a friend of mine. He's a dentist from the States who's also a member of the International Association of Medicine and Toxicology in the States. And there's about 1,000 dentists that belong to that. And he came on and gave some boom, boom, boom science as well. That just so hard hitting. Like you can't deny the stuff that him and Dr. Ashley Malin were talking about.
You were just punching the air after hearing that, right?
Yes. What a one. Good one. Yes. I was so
But I think you know all about it. It takes courage. Unfortunately, I mean, it shouldn't have to take courage, but it takes courage to stand up and fight for what you believe in, and you're putting your neck out there. So I think a lot of people have you to thank for that, and a lot of people, especially, I think there's a lot that are just on the fence, right? They just don't understand.
No, and I took my lumps with the college. I had to pay a $6,000 fine, and while I'm over, I had to take a 2-day psychological remediation course like Jordan Peterson has to do, or they tried to force him to do in Ontario.
Yeah.
And,
You did it? That was a 6-day course?
no, it's a 2-day course. I have to pay for it on my own money, and I've not done it yet. I'm still contemplating whether I'll do it since I retired last month.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I just pled guilty. The only thing I did plead guilty to, I mentioned those 3 things that that they dropped, the charges they dropped. But the one thing I did plead guilty to was professional misconduct, because I called the people in public health and in public positions that were lying when they were lying, and I had the proof to prove that they were lying. I called them liars, and that's a no-no as a doctor. So that's professional misconduct, and I couldn't really fight that one because it's in the Physicians and Surgeons bylaws.
Still pretty unscathed, and you're still standing here fighting the good fight, right? So now the water's coming in, or sorry, the fluoride is coming into the water. End of this month, I heard mid-April. I think it got pushed. Now is it going to be pushed into April potentially?
I wasn't going to mention that. I thought it was confidential, but now that you know it, that means a lot of people know it. It's supposed to be okay. The story there was, so we lost the vote in 2021. Council voted 13-2 in favor of water fluoridation as soon as the new council got in November. And then in February of 2022, they voted for water fluoridation. They passed a motion and they gave Calgary Waterworks, $10 million. Waterworks said they'd have it done and in by 2023. By 2023, Waterworks came back and they said, supply chain and infrastructure and all that stuff, we're not even close. We need a bunch more money. But they didn't ask City Council for that money. They went to administration. And administration wrote them a check for an additional $18 million out of their slush fund without even talking to council. There's some city councilors that are still pretty miffed about that.
Well, there's some bullshit going on down there with
so there is $28 million. So then they said they'd have it in by early 2024, which is a year ago. And in early 2024, they came back and said, well, that supply chain thing and infrastructure thing, how about the first quarter, Q1 of 2025? And we won't ask you for any more money. And so council went, oh, whatever, okay. And so here we are in Q1. We're in the last month of Q1 of 2025, and now it's been pushed out to at least mid-April. and really pounding at them hard. So Kevin, please sign our petition at Safe Water Calgary. Have all your listeners sign the petition, safewatercalgary.com. There's a beautiful blue petition button right at the top, and it goes through all the whereases and the what for's and the science there. It's a really good petition. Sign that, have your friends and neighbors sign it. And we're over 6,000 now in the last couple of weeks since we put it out.
Oh, good for you. Yeah.
And so we're bombarding, and we just sent out hard copies 2 days ago to all the city councilors individually and to the mayor and to David Duckworth. Don't forget to email and call David Duckworth because he's the CAO, the Chief Administrative Officer of the City of Calgary. And he's the one that signs all the checks. He has the power. So tell him, he's an engineer. Engineers shouldn't be putting something unethical like water fluoridation.
No question.
They should.
Well, you heard him, everyone. Yeah, you get onto the website, sign the petition, and I'm going to blast this out everywhere I can for sure. And so this is going to be kind of the last push to see if we can stop it or have it pushed or delayed or right?
So we're working in other cities across Canada too. I'm the chair of Fluoride Free Canada as well. And we're working in other cities and we're making some progress there. I'm not going to mention any places or names right now because it's pretty sensitive. Now we are working other places across Canada to get this shut down too. Before we go, Kevin, I know we spent quite a bit of time, so I thank you for that. But I'd just like to mention briefly, I talked about those two major things that say efficacy or efficiency of fluoride or effectiveness is so low. There's two major studies that came out too. The NTP, the National Toxicology Program report, was finally released after 4 years of being censored, shut down, negated. We finally got that out in August of 2024, and 18 of the top 19 studies in there showed brain damage. 18 of the 19 top studies of the NTP report. And then in September, on September 24th, we finally got the judgment of the 7-year federal court case in the United States, and we won that one too, because the judge said there's substantial evidence of risk to kids' brains, and so the EPA has to do something about it. So we got two major events and studies and reports on fluoridation and the lack of effectiveness. We've got two major events and reports on the brain damage that it causes in kids. That should be enough for nobody in the world to ever fluoridate anymore.
Yeah, let's stop trying to move that mountain. I think it should come tumbling down now. It sounds like it.
5% of the world fluoridates, and the vast majority of that is in the United States. And so that means 95% of the world does not fluoridate. So we are still in the majority there.
We're living in the past. Yeah, it's time to turn the page. Stop drinking this stuff. All right, awesome, Dr. Bob. That was fantastic. Nice work. We'll talk to you again.
One last sentence. Fluoridation, don't swallow it.